Welcome, everyone. I'm Tenneson, and I'm with my friends Kathy and Jerry. And this is another Shades of Life conversation, which we started doing about 5 or so months ago. Recorded conversations, not unlike what you referenced earlier, Kathy, where we get into these good conversations and recognize a bit belatedly that would have been a good one to record because it's thick and learning or it's got some excitement in it and some interest in it. So we've done 3 or 4 of these now, I think, along the way, and continue to be able to come together and just explore a little bit this way. I think of these conversations, or part of the hunger that I have in these conversations is I want to be live with some people
Mm,
that I like learning with. And Shades of Life is the format that we've come up with to represent maybe some different views in life and some different orientations and maybe discoveries that come with that. So I think of this as a little gathering, the three of us in our colleagues' way, to be curious together in our friendship way, and maybe to follow some wonder together and just know that there's good things that can come out of the wonder. So that's all of the framing. And we're going to bring some particular conversations in today, or at least the ones that arise, but maybe a little voice of hello from each of you too also.
Hello from wonderful, chilly, but not snowy Minnesota. Right now, we have about 2 or 3 inches on the ground, and a year ago, we had about 5 feet on the ground. So life feels a little weird, but at least it's cold. So that helps for winter.
Well, hello also from Minnesota, where I am at the moment, having arrived yesterday from Nova Scotia. And Jerry and I are preparing for an art of participatory leadership and worldview intelligence training or programs or whatever language we want to use around that. Being very aware of language these days and how it shapes our thinking and our experiences as well. I'm just delighted to be here and continuing these Shades of Life conversations for wherever they take us, because they do go to some really interesting and unexpected places because they are not planned out at all. We just show up and here we are and we're in our exploration.
Awesome. Okay, we're gonna play, right?
Yes, we
I'll bring a
totally
little
are going to play.
situation first, and in the completely unscriptedness of things, just bring it in so that we can be in our out loud learning together. So I'm bringing something that feels like I've been working on it during the week here. It's a focus on, I'm choosing between a couple here, but it's a focus on courage. You two know that I have a little workshop coming up next week in the pop-up series that I've been offering that is titled something, what is it? To practice courage is to practice leadership. I'm not sure I even like that titling, but that's what I named when I was trying to create it. And I find that I've been following this topic of courage a lot. And I've been trying to create an exercise that goes with courage. Like, how do we develop courage? And it kind of getting lost in my head a bit and, scrambling around a little bit like, who even cares anymore, after I've thought about it for a while. But I think there's something that matters about, I'll keep it personal and know that it goes beyond that, and then invite you to do the reflecting and wondering and questioning and all of that you do. Um, I feel like I've spent a good chunk of my life trying to grow courage.
Mhm.
And most of my association with growing courage is more like tenacity kinds of things or bravery
Mm.
kinds of things. And I think all of that is true. But I notice, as is my sort of want in life, is that I so want to look around underneath that and look to the things that maybe are a part of courage. Don't want to get stuck on words, but don't be afraid of them either. um, Maybe are just a little bit more about clarity or a little bit more about some kind of personal conviction or the conviction that comes from clarity. So, I'm really wanting to tease some of that out. in the invitation that I wrote and sent out to people so that they could know a bit of what they're signing up for, these are some words that I wrote. This workshop, it's a workshop next Thursday, by the way. This workshop is for people that wish to cultivate more meaning and fulfillment through courage. Courage is bravery, or courage is of the heart. Courage is clarity. Courage is simplicity. Courage is celebration. Courage is mustered commitment to the next 15 minutes and then the next after that. Courage is staying kind with things that hurt. Courage is in the details. Courage is in the bigger picture. Courage is in the personal. Courage is in the communal. Those are some of the words that felt good to write.
Mm.
Now, I've been stewing around on this for a week and kind of creating a little practice, and I really have hit some points of like blah, 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 blah. I'm tired of hearing myself think about courage. And so maybe that's one of the reasons that I'm bringing it today in the space of our Shades of Life versions with one another. I really would like to hear and add to or know a little bit of, where you two each sort of initially move when you think of the relevance of courage. And I'll just put one more little bit in there too, because yeah, I kind of start with, well, one part of it for me is that that I relate to, I suppose, is, I relate to trying to find the clarity of heart. And when I find clarity of heart, whether that be about steps and things that need to be done, or just some overarching purpose of who I am as a human or who I am as a human with other people, something comes alive. So I think I'm a little more oriented into trying to find, boy, gosh, I feel like I'm thinking out loud, trying to find ways to be present with my heart and create spaces where others are present in their heart. And I think good things arise out of that. Meaningful things arise out of that. That's a story that I know to be true, and I also want to be true. And, sometimes run into my own doubts about how true that is. Wow, that's a big, giant burp of a courage thing. I am welcoming you two friends, colleagues, to chime in with the ways that you chime in. Courage.
So, first of all, what are you doing Monday morning? Because Jerry and I are co-hosting an art of participatory leadership. And what I love about this is we did not talk about this theme of courage, and yet some of the invitation in our framing for the 2 days of art of participatory leadership and one of worldview intelligence is this theme of courage and boldness. And how do we embrace the things that we are most challenged by, and how do we open the ground for conversations where we know we're going to get pushback?
Mm.
And how do we do that in the sense of community? And what I was looking for just before we started this call is the Hopi prophecy, which I know, Tenneson, you've heard, because it's been since my involvement in the art of hosting conversations that matter since 2005. This phrase or refrain of "we are the ones we've been waiting for" has been all around us. And it popped up in my awareness in some of the preparation that we were doing for this work that we're about to do. And, it starts out with, "You have been telling the people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go and tell the people that this is the hour." And so 2005, almost 2 decades ago, this has been a field that I have been swimming in, involved in, and more than ever, it feels like this is the hour. And the question that sparks some of my inquiry is, what is the courage that is needed to engage in this moment, in this no longer the 11th hour, but the hour of our destiny and our time here on the planet Earth. So courage is such an interesting question, not just quality of what we're needing and calling into being in this moment. And that I think, as we've been thinking about the upcoming program, the Art of Participatory Leadership, we know some people are coming with some very committed, fiery passions around activism and justice in the world. And I think that for me, this is calling us to be bolder and more courageous, maybe than we've ever been, in the invitation into a space and a conversation. I'll stop there.
Mhm. I've been thinking a lot about uncertainty of late. And certainly Tennyson, you described forms of courage. The big news story around here the past couple of days is how someone jumped into an icy river to save someone, that kind of courage. But bigger or smaller, I don't need to size it so much as just to say stepping into uncertainty requires some courage. And it can take a lot of forms. And I've been really thinking about it in terms of the chaotic path, that chaos maybe is more about uncertainty and order is more about certainty. And so what's it like to say, let's just be uncertain here? Let's invite voices into the conversation we've never invited in before, and we don't know what they're going to say, and we don't know what they're going to offer. Let's invite new ideas into this exploration, and we don't know what those ideas are going to be, and we don't know where they're going to take us. Or let's just kind of say, we'll sit in the mess for a little while. We know that as human beings, our brains like familiarity, our brains like certainty. We know as humans, we have a tendency to like certainty, and the diamond of participation, we converge too soon. But I think that it takes an element of courage to be in that space of uncertainty and trusting that if you go there, coming out the other end can be new ideas and innovation and new ways to see the world. That uncertainty is not a place you don't want to go to, but actually a place you might want to be in, because it creates the opportunity for something new to be there that wasn't there before, or you hadn't thought of before, or whatever. But whether it's a big or a small courage, whatever it is, I think it really does take courage to just be uncertain. And then maybe lastly, to host that space with others. So we're all, some of us as a team, as a group, as friends, as partners, as being in a heart space, and even being in a heart space, as I was listening to you, sometimes you go, do I really want to be here? Am I certain about this relationship, this place we're in, this love that I'm holding? Am I certain about it? And you got to go, well, be courageous. Let it be uncertain for a moment and trust that you're going where it's meant to go. Yeah. So I appreciate the bringing of the topic, and it really connects to what I've been spinning around in the empty spaces around what is uncertainty.
Yeah. Well, can I pick up from there, Jerry? One, I like it that this is spinning around in both of you also. And there's a lot of shared places that we might come from, and then there's some new places in all of that also. So I'm relating to the uncertainty thread, Jerry, and in the pieces, Kathy, that you were sharing, I feel like I'm trying to nuance this, actually. I feel like I'm trying to real-time nuance this, because the bulk of my sort of first level association with courage is often bravery. And sometimes that's like, okay, like we can find lots of bravery to go into the dark room, but there's other more subtle forms, bravery to stand up for something, or stand up for a belief. Or I think in the world that I so try to inhabit and am longing for is like it's the bravery to trust my heart or trust our hearts, when we're in those collective spaces. And maybe in part because, damn it, it's all uncertain, or we need it to be uncertain for a while. So there's something about like I think these forms of bravery that are less about I feel so small when I'm saying it this way, less about muscles and more about uh, some kind of like clarity or yearning for a different story. Now, one of the things that the three of us share is we do work with people, we work with groups, we're trying to help them be smart, good, whatever narrative you want to put on that. But we're holding a pretty big story there about what we can do together that we don't do or can't do alone. And maybe even what we can feel together that we might not be able to feel alone. Like that's a different story of the universe or a different story of people in the universe. And I noticed that there seems to be some big chunk in my courage category that is that continues to drift into something about what's the real story that we're living here and daring to stand up for that story when it's different or with a group of people that aren't really relating to that story. I think there's something in that for me. Let me pause. How do you relate to that? I think is where I'm going.
One thing, I don't know if it's quite where you're going or not, but sparked for me when I was listening to you, it's the notion of how do we measure courage? And within ourselves, how do we measure courage? So we read the story of the person running into the fire building and hauling somebody out, or jumping into the icy river, or this, and we might ask ourselves, would I do that or not? Is that the measure for me of my own personal courage? And I think that that's not the right measure. I'm not quite sure what the right measure is, but I don't think we need to do something big like that necessarily. We might just be the simple thing of sitting with someone you don't know and having a conversation with them and seeing where that goes. That is, maybe that's a little bit of courage right there. My grandfather was a man of deep religious conviction, and he would go to places, shopping malls or other, and witness, and he would just sit and I mean, he wasn't aggressive about it. He might just sit on a bench and wait to somebody to sit next to him, and then he would do what he called witness. To me, that's some courage. I don't know that I could ever do that, but maybe in my own small way, sometimes I engage in a conversation with a stranger, and it's out of my comfort zone, and it might take a little bit of courage in some way. I don't know. So, but what's the measure of it, I guess? And I think that we don't need to measure ourselves against the hero. Maybe it's a measure of moving into discomfort or uncertainty or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but I think we need to get out of the hero is the measure of courage mindset. Yeah.
So where I went with that is not so much about measuring courage as assessing courage and how we assess it within ourselves versus observing somebody else. So as you both know, I wrote a memoir, and there's a lot of honesty that shows up in that memoir, and people will comment on it was brave or it was courageous. And I'm like, well, it was telling a story that needed to be told versus as courageous in telling that story. It's also an interesting side note how many people will read it and think that they know me. Kind of like, the me that existed up to the point of the publication date and whatever, but you know, like, because we are all evolving as human beings, you might not actually know the me now, post the memoir or post that punctuation mark on the end of the stories told in that memoir. Do I see myself courageous in that? I see myself taking measured risk. I never thought about it like this before, so I'll just kind of say it this way. Measured risk, and what were the stories that I wanted to tell? What was the degree to which I wanted to tell those stories? Because other people are involved, and there's I'm gonna say limit. I don't think that's quite right, but there's a degree to which you actually want to reveal self in all of that. And there's also things like some challenges in relationships that can't be spoken about to the same degree of clarity or courage at one point in time as they can be spoken about at another point in time later down the road. So I think there's that. But if you look at, I'm sure any one of us being told that we're courageous or we're brave mostly would want to deny those words, even if they are truly applied. And yet we can look at other people and go, that was brave, that was courageous. So I think, you know, when Jerry's talking about how do you measure courage, I'm like, how do we assess it within ourselves and within other people? And I think that we use a different lens when we're looking at ourselves and when we're looking at other people.
I feel like this is creating a swirl.
And so it should.
And so it should. The part of it for me that shifts a little is I'm hosting a workshop tomorrow, a thing that I was asked to do, and I think 20 or so people will show up, and the excuse me, the naming, this is an interfaith spiritual community. And the naming that we came up with was about reimagining together and how to develop some skills and heart of going together. So the heart again of going together, reclaiming how we go together. I think part of what's happening in our call is it's stirring some things that are already stirring in me that that particularly appreciates damn, it particularly appreciates when the heart is involved, like when the heart the medium or is a medium of, you know, either representation or inquiry or connection or something like that. When it comes from the heart, wow, that takes some courage. And maybe I'm just like finding that in a mirror in some way right now. It's just, you know, thinking of the times that I've been called courageous also. Wow, I love how you said that. That was so courageous. And I wasn't trying to be courageous. I was trying to be honest. Something like that, or maybe true to the belly. So it might be that I have a particular lifelong thing in me that is trying to align or further integrate my belly and my heart and some of the things that I know in my head and some of the things I know in my toes. And that's a particular form of courage, right? I think there's a meta story in there that I'm probably trying to find my way to.
I'm not sure we ever open our mouths. And I think in particular about our hosting our participatory leadership trainings when we're there, we're co-hosting or we're speaking up. I don't think there's ever a moment when we open our mouths and go, I'm going to be courageous in this moment.
Yeah.
I think we might go, this is what's stirring in me. This is what's in my heart. This is what I need to speak right now. But I don't ever remember a moment where I would have said to myself, I'm going to be courageous right now.
Yeah.
Or brave.
Yeah.
But I am going to speak some truth, or some truth, what's true for me or what's rising up in me that feels like it needs to be shared in this space.
So one of the, sort of back into this heart part of the conversation for a moment. One of the things we talk about a bit in some of our work is this notion that you go to work and you're told to park your emotions at the door and come into the office space, the workspace, with just, you know, your thinking brain, your intellectual brain, whatever. And the question that I'm wondering is, why is that? What is it about? Why do we create a system where you park your heart or your emotions or whatever at the door and don't bring it in? And if you do bring it in, then why is that defined as courage? You know, you know, speak from the heart instead of the head in some space or whatever. I suppose we can intellectualize this. We can go back to you know, how we created the industrial system and all of that kind of stuff, and we've created an economy that you know, has turned us into, you know, robots working in a factory kind of thing. But why is it that we need courage to not park our heart at the door, not park our emotions at the door, that they can just, they travel with us wherever we go? And we've been talking a lot, Kathy and I, the past couple of days, as you mentioned earlier, about systems change and the two loops and so on. And you know, would that be a systems change, that we don't have to do that any longer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a systems change, a change in the stories that feed a system. That.
Yeah.
I think if you were showing up to be on the manufacturing line, you don't necessarily need to bring emotions into some of the repetitive tasks that show up. And it just, I think, pervaded a lot of workspace where logic became the king of how we solve problems and make progress in the world, without the understanding that logic is not logical, but everything we do is infused with emotions, and all of our decision making is infused with emotions, as much as we like to try to deny that. So it is, I think it's an interesting question that you asked, Jerry, about why is it seen as courage when we defy this, don't bring your emotions to work?
Yeah, I feel like there's, yeah, again, bunch that swirls, I guess, but this is probably my learning style that I like most. It's like I think about something and then I need to swirl it with others, or I want to swirl it with others, because you know, to me it's always layered. So at the deeply personal, I'm going to say it's all personal, but at the deeply personal layer, um, you know, I think I carry this, oh yeah, like massively personal thing in me that turns out to be a little more universal, of trying to be enough. You know, the am I enough question. Like, what a ridiculous question, and what a present energy. So I have that in me. And I think the way that it plays into this conversation is the hunger slash yearning, or one of the hungers and yearnings that I have so much of, is, oh gosh, you know, being in the space where we listen well to ourselves and each other, where we move into the uncertainty with deliberateness and curiosity and kindness and some of those things. So there's the deeply personal in it, and then there's also like trying to stand for the story that maybe there's another way. Just this week, I started using the language of a soulful way, realizing that's part of the hunger that I have. And, that's another hornet's nest of multiple meanings and cautions and excitements, some of that. But then when I bring it into the group, like the courage, I think that so many of us try to bring into a group is the very notion that we might be able to be a little more wise together, or a little more thoughtful, or that our thoughtfulness, our heartfulness might inspire each other into even more heartfulness and thoughtfulness together. Yeah, that's just recombobulated purpose statements of why groups, or why teams, or why an art of hosting, and why even try to get to the deeper meaning and practice of things? Why even try to get to the worldview layer of things? I don't know if I'm really concluding anything in all of that, but I feel like I'm probably reaffirming something of, deep hunger, and a hunger that does show up in the collective space too.
I'm smiling because I want to go, you're just now using the language of a soulful way?
Aha.
Seriously? I think maybe you're consciously using it now, but as long as I've known you, Tenneson, you have always been in this place of a soulful way.
Appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
So I wonder, I'm going to come back to a little bit of what I was talking about earlier about sort of the industrial system, if you will. And I think that a component of that is to take away agency, our agency as humans, and to fit us into some box or whatever, and we behave in a certain way. And a key part of the agency that's been taken away from us is that heartfeltness, that empathyness, that connectedness, that elements that aren't just the automaton. And here we are today in a troubled society that I think has found itself in a world where we've lost agency. And I mean it not in that not the agency that I can choose to go out and drive to the grocery store or whatever, but the agency that allows me to bring my full self, my soulful self, my heart self, all of who I am into wherever I am. And then I can make courageous choices about what I share or show or act on when I'm there. But that's agency also, the choice. Those choices give me agency. But I have them. That's the thing. I have the agency to make a choice. And there's a lot of what's out there right now that works hard to take away that agency, to limit it, to not let us be fully who we are wherever we are in the choices we make.
Jerry, I would invite you to talk about, because this relates back to uncertainty and agency, and the example of the space station was about, you know what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah. So there's some interesting research around uncertainty, and one of the stories that was researched and told was people were in the space station, and the ground control people wanted to make certain that everything was very precise. They were thinking safety. So every movement, every minute of every day was managed. And the people on the space station eventually said, wait a minute, you've taken away all of our agency. we can't respond to anything anywhere. We're completely controlled. So we moved beyond order to control. And they basically, the people on the space station basically revolted and said, and then the net result was innovative things started to happen on the space station. New learning started to emerge, things that they hadn't expected because the ground control people let go of the need for certainty to allow agency to explore and learn. And it made a big difference. And yeah.
And I think that just goes back to what we talk about when we talk about the chaotic path and chaos and order and control, which is what is the most elegant, simplest structure we can create for people to have purpose and clarity and also agency.
Earlier today, I was at the dentist. An old tooth
Fun.
broke apart, and I got to go get it worked on. And I'm lying in the chair, and the dentist is working on my tooth, and I'm just daydreaming away while I'm in the chair. And I do some good thinking in the dentist chair, actually. I wish I could record my brain, right? Or record my heart. Because I'm thinking about this dentist and I'm thinking, I really like it that he, in this case, has technical skill. Like if he doesn't have technical skill, I don't want him as a dentist.
Right.
So I'm happy that he's got technical skill. And then I'm also thinking, I'm really happy that he's got kind of good human skills, within his profession in general, in the limited way that I know him. He's talking about, he interacts with me and, does it in a way that isn't just when I've got things in my mouth. And he's very human about it. He describes the process in a way that I appreciate it. This is what we're going to do. You're looking great. A couple more steps here. He's narrating out loud in a way that felt helpful. And then a third category for me is artistry. Like he's got some artistry. He cares about his work.
Yeah.
He was even describing earlier of how his spouse is an accountant and working to do some tax jobs in tax season, kind of freelance or something like that. And he just says, like, I'm so glad she knows how to do that because I don't do that. I do teeth, and you can feel his artistry in it. So how am I connecting all of that in? While I'm in the dentist chair, I think I'm thinking about what it means to host groups of people a little bit, whether it's around a theme of courage or other things. There is something about having some technical skill, having some humanity, and having some artistic orientation, some artistry in it that seems to matter. And I think I'm just pulling that into our conversation also. It's one of the things I appreciate among us. I know that we have oodles of technical skill, and we're also picking up a humanity with one another and a love of teeth, a love of the learning it together kind of stuff. So I think I'm saying that as an appreciation here.
It's interesting what you just said, Tenneson, because my dentist is in Fargo. I drive 4 hours twice a year to go see him because he's like what you just described. And, old school dentists, I remember I had those old school dentists when I was young, and they had limited personality and they just dive right in and pull, drill, whatever they all did. And going to the dentist was an awful experience, and dentists have a very high suicide rate, and something happened in dentistry. So when I go see my guy, he remembers what we talked about 6 months ago and asks about something or else. He's more like a friend in a way than my dentist. And he's describing it, when he's doing something, he describes it all the way. It's a narrative I understand. And I note that because something changed there. You know, I mean, if your dentist is doing it and my dentist is doing it, and I wonder if other dentists are doing it, is what happened to change a kind of profession
Mhm.
to move into this sort of interpersonal connection? That it's not just go and get your teeth pulled and get out the door. There's a relationship there that's in that moment that seems to linger enough that he remembers. When I go 6 months from now, he'll remember something from when I was just there in December. It's yeah, it's an interesting shift in my mind now. As I really thought of it, I just thought he was just a nice guy, and he is. But there's something more happening in a field.
Mhm.
Some awareness seemed to emerge that perhaps where dentists are now bringing more of themselves to the work than maybe it once was.
Mm.
Could be making notes. Some are. So I have two sort of are hosting related thoughts, because thinking about the curative path, and I'm going, okay, dentist, technical skill, whatever profession, that's kind of in the control circle, right? We develop a skill. And then I think this human skill that we're talking about sort of falls in the order circle, for lack of a better word. And then there's this question of artistry, which is the whole relationship piece, which weaves throughout all of those things. And without the relationship, all we have is sort of states that we talk about that don't really have much connecting point, I think. So that's like one thing. And the other thing, before we started recording this call, we talked briefly about the two loops of systems change. And Jerry and I have been talking about this a lot, because we are likely to bring it into this art of participatory leadership that we're doing. And one of the things that we've been talking about is this notion of like the old system dying. And then this question of, well, does it really die? Like, we're really engaged in this question right now. So when Jerry's talking about how dentistry has changed, well, dentistry didn't die,
Mhm. Mm.
but it's evolved, and these new patterns of interaction are happening in the new loop. And so it's a question that we're very animated about at the moment, as we're trying to think about dying systems, whether or not there is such a thing as a legacy system and what that means, and how the two loops is something that can help us understand where we are in the moment, which is kind of where we're landing as we're thinking about this. And in particular, we're thinking about it because seems to be in the world such a huge moment of social change, social unrest, uncertainty, all of that. So how will we work with the two loops with this group in a way that helps us understand where we are in this present moment? So it's for me, and I think for Jerry and me, as we're talking about it, it's a bit of a reimagining of some of the original meaning or assumptions around the two loops, not making it any less relevant, but maybe making it even more relevant given what we've learned over 20 years of two loops explorations.
What say we each check out, and then I started it, so I'll maybe offer some closing words. We're done. How's that sound?
Cool.
I love it that you're playing that we're playing the dentistry model now. With things small and big. It's not unlike the conversation I was having earlier today about medical health profession, and not just it. Technical skills must exist. I want the doc to know what she or he is doing.
Yep.
But I also want that person interacting with me. I want that person narrating some of the story. I want them to tell me a little bit about what I want them to be with me. Interesting. I'm excited for you two that you are in some art of hosting space and worldview space, intelligence space next week. Makes me want to be there also. And maybe my words of checkout are just, I think it's an appreciation of this kind of friendship. We do come together to probably do all of those three things. Like, we are talking technical at some layer, and we are talking artistry, and we are talking humanity. So yeah, that was a little grouping that I didn't have before the dentist's office this morning. And I feel like it's playing out a little bit here also. I appreciate you two in the wicked good friendship that we have and wicked good learning that we have. That's me.
Well, I really like that you brought the topic of courage into this conversation. And we've been not so explicit about the word courage as we've been planning for this coming week. But it's been in I'm going to be doing the invitation, reading the Hopi Prophecy poem and thinking about courage and boldness. So it's like really high in my awareness. And I just, and Jerry and I haven't so specifically used those words a lot as we've been in the planning. So I just love that you bring it in from like this completely different orientation in a way, which just shows that we're still all working in the same energy fields, that the things that are alive for you, some of the things that are alive for you are some of the things that are alive for us. And like, how cool is that? And if we weren't doing this thing, Shades of Life, on a regular basis, we might not be so aware of the energies that are influencing how we're thinking, how we're hosting, how we're living.
Oh my gosh, we need another couple hours because this is just so much fun. But I'm going to come back to a little bit of what we talked about even before we started recording, Tenneson, in this issue of medicine. And I'm going to just offer sort of two thoughts that could emerge elsewhere. One is, if I'm in a transactional relationship with my physician, I want my physician to be certain. When I go there, I want the physician to tell me what's wrong with me or what needs to be attended to or whatever, and it's a transactional relationship. But if I don't want to be in a transactional relationship, if I want to be in a different kind of relationship, then I think it requires two kinds of courage. One is on the part of the physician, it requires some courage to say, maybe we should look at some other options here. Maybe I can't be certain about what's absolutely happening, or maybe there's some other, we should look at thinking about this in a different way. But then it also requires on my part the courage to be willing to accept that my physician is not 100% certain. And I have an expectation of that certainty, that we both need to be a little courageous in the relationship between us, because maybe whatever is going on with me is not what appears on the surface to be the most certain answer. That maybe there's something else that needs to be attended to. And maybe that is even outside of medicine, how many other times do we need to be in a relationship that's not so transactional, or I seek the technical expertise, but a little bit of courage on each part to explore more what's going on. Why does one tire in my car keep going flat? Why does this keep happening, or some other kind of thing happening? And I just want it repaired all the time, when maybe it's my driving habit that needs to change, and I need to, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's kind of, I'm complete.
Thanks everyone for listening today. Shades of Life, Shades of Learning, Shades of Living. It's good to be together, the three of us. Jerry and Kathy, you're at worldviewintelligence.com. Snoop around there. I'm tennysonwolf.com. Thanks for joining today.